In the Boom Factor Part 2, which everyone should pay a lot of attention to, go listen to it at least twice, I revealed that the one massive, seemingly singular, multi-jurisdictional, sudden overwhelming prosecution and smearing of me was actually just a confluence of multiple different interests, which were all triggered all at once. It wasn't a single attack. It was from several different angles and all at the same time. Multiple weaponized agencies, countless really, and multiple different force multipliers of the media, that's the press, all of whom, each of whom, I guess I should say, holds the unbridled power to destroy lives. The press can and loves to do that. And I told you in that call video about the why behind and the connections of what I call the third cartel. That is the Aberdeen cartel. And there's really no way to overstate the seriousness of it. As I said, that's the kind of stuff that starts wars. This call right here, this one is named Tools. And this is about something that the Obama administration considered very seriously damaging. They did everything possible to try to first hide all this and then deny this information, and then relying on their kind of media allies, or co-conspirators really, just to kind of sweep it under the rug. Cartel number 2, that's what this is about. It included James Johnson. James Johnson is a guy who most closely resembles an AIDS patient of the mid-1980s, or maybe a long-time heroin junkie, or the remains of a bris that was left on the sidewalk. He's really just a skinny little talented, shriveled thing. They kind of remind you of a stick of beef jerky, but wearing the badge of the sheriff of Lee County. That's Tupelo, y'all. Now, listen, don't get mad at me, Tupeloites. I know that the characters on the Kings of Tupelo, it really kind of makes all of Tupelo look like idiots, kind of a clown show. But don't say I didn't warn you. It's been nearly a decade now, so I can say all this without looking like a jerk. But even if I do,
this call is from a federal prison.
Who cares? Because I'm in a federal prison, as you can hear. So here goes. I told you so. Now, I'm here, and you guys are stuck out there with all those wackos as your representatives for all the world to see. The shriveled-up jerky sheriff, James Johnson, that's your guy, so, be proud. I didn't vote for him, you did. I tried to warn you, but no. So there, he's your guy. And so is another so-called king, who's really a queen, as we all know, Steve Holland. Just as just as Senator Nunley, later Congressman Nunley, just as he told me then to label Steve Holland as the embarrassment that he is, you now see it. I tried to warn you, once again. In fact, I spent a small fortune doing exactly that. TV, mailers, forums, speeches, newspapers. But did you listen? No. You voted for him again. So he's your guy. So don't act embarrassed now. Steve Holland is your representative to the world now. He represents the typical Tupeloite in the eyes of the world. Hell, he claims he's your king. He literally says that. So you wanted him, you got him, Tupelo. Congratulations on your attention-starved media whore, Steve Holland. Kevin Curtis, well, Tupelo, he's your celebrated guy, so enjoy. I'm certain he's going to do so very much to improve your life because just like Holland and the others, he's not self-centered at all, right? Plus, Kevin Curtis just has so much to offer, and obviously he's put his limitless skills and amazing ability to work at his full-time job every day, whatever the hell that is, at such great sacrifice and price to himself because, just look at his long record of amazing accomplishments. There is no one, literally no one, and there's not much sarcasm needed here. There's nobody in the Tupelo area with a record of accomplishment which can compare to his. Laura Curtis, who in a recent podcast nobody cares about, actually called herself the Queen of Tupelo, which really, by the way, isn't fair to the irrelevant, attention-starved media whore Steve Holland, who is the actual Queen of Tupelo. Anyway, the world now thinks that she, Laura Curtis, that she represents you. The world, now having seen how she represented Tupelo via Netflix, the world now believes that you ladies of Tupelo try hard to be the office slut and all have affairs with your husband's brother, or try to. And to be honest, quite frankly, I'm still just a little confused about her on-camera representations of Tupelo office life. I suspect that the Netflix guys lubricated the hell out of Laura Curtis before her interviews. Let me explain here. When I say lubricated, I use that term in the way that my agency buddies do when they get to their recruited assets, their sources. When you get your source really, really drunk, so he or she will just share.
This call is from a federal prison.
It is the oldest trick in the book. We call it lubrication. And by the way, I also did not mean lubrication in the way that Steve Holland does when he visits his old buddy in Arkansas, just to be clear. What I mean is that the Netflix guys encouraged, I think, Laura Curtis to just drink up, which, keep in mind, is really a bad idea if you wish to create a good impression about Tupelites. So what I'm suggesting is getting that hammered does not help the genteel image of Tupelites at all. And by hammered, I don't mean hammered like, pounded, like what Jack Curtis used to do to Laura Curtis, the wife of Kevin Curtis. You see how complicated this can get? I'm already kind of lost. And apparently, said hammering was actually occurring at Jack's office, or maybe it was some hotel room. I don't know. But to add to that confusion, I'm not quite sure what you said, but to add to that confusion, think about Kevin Curtis's kids, Kevin and Laura Curtis's kids. If you think you're confused, how the hell did they, how the kids of Laura Curtis and Kevin Curtis, how are they supposed to make sense of this? Listen, your father's brother, who is also your uncle, is bumping uglies or going downtown on your father's wife, who is also your mother? How the hell can any of that make any sense to the kids? When they think, what about Christmas and Thanksgiving? When they think about that, what can they possibly say? Or what are they going to say? Yeah, Mom, I get it. I guess I would shag Uncle Jack too, because, Dad's the lesser Curtis. Come on. But, congratulations, Tupelo. You vanished when I needed you. But at least now you can support your so-called kings and self-called queen of Tupelo, Laura Curtis. I did try to warn you about these people. I told you so. Now people worldwide have to try to figure out all the bizarre mating habits of Tupelo natives, because I sure don't get it. I mean, think about explain that to the kids by telling them, listen, kids, the only way I can explain this to you is your mom got jacked. So the only person on the planet who can really relate is Hunter Biden. And we see how celebrated is his character. Although, in fairness, long ago I did kind of hook up with twin sisters, but not at the same time. And I'm certain that there's some sort of a line that normal people consider that once you have kids, then your spouse's husband or your sister or his sister or her sister, whatever, is kind of off limits. There's a special place in hell for those people, just like there's a special place in hell for false sexual accusers too, by the way. And all of that was kind of odd to me anyway, considering that Tupelo tries to portray a very different public face. In Tupelo, sex itself is a crime, or at least that's what they want you to think. Tupelo is literally the place, and this is not made up, and Tupelo is literally the place with a law on the books banning the sale of vibrators. As Joe Biden would say, not a joke. I actually recall, some time ago, but when Spencer's Gifts, a store in the mall, was forced to remove the women's massagers from its sales shelves, I remember that. The fake news WTVA even covered it, kind of like it was some sort of a scandalous thing. So that's when Tupelo women were forced to shop discreetly online and in catalogs in order to get their playthings, because not every undersexed woman in Tupelo, which is all of them I suspect, had themselves a convenient Jack Curtis around to be the backdoor man. I'm sure Laura Curtis didn't mean to be the backdoor man quite the same way that Steve Holland means it. Anyway, according to Laura Curtis, though I still kind of have low confidence on how much she can really be believed, her dalliances, I suspect, were in part due to her sense of rejection because of Kevin Curtis's kind of extreme addiction to the most bizarre, kind of sickest forms of internet porn, which may be ubiquitous these days, but not so much in the early and mid 2000s. This is where you should probably insert a line of jokes about internet porn back in the days of dial-up internet. Kind of like this one. Here's one. Mid-2000s, early 2000s. This is the period of time where the internet porn pictures here we go. The pornography loaded slower than Kevin unloaded. It's a buffering joke, people. It's only funny to those people that remember low-baud phone modems. By the way, I understand in the Kings of Tupelo how Laura Curtis tried to do a good job to portray herself as the office slut. But I'd like to point out her very bad work ethic in that regard, because I didn't even notice. I don't recall Jack's office being anything at all like that. But based definitely on this. Listen, if you're working hard to portray yourself as the office tramp, then you didn't do a good job, since no one noticed. So I say, try harder next time. Try harder next time. Which coincidentally is exactly what Steve Holland's wife told him on their wedding night. Only it sounded a lot more like try harder next time. And that didn't work. Anyway, people, know this. I told you so. I tried to warn you about these clowns, but you made your choice, so congratulations. Actually, I'm really getting way, way, way off track here, so let me reorient. Cabal number 2. That's what we're talking about, the tools. In 2012, and this is where things get serious, in 2012, there was a man named Dale Parker who was loaded with secrets that he was expected to leak. Normally, he was a very reliable CI who was very plugged into the criminal underworld and to law enforcement too, although that's kind of a large gray area in North Mississippi since they're one and the same. He got wind of a group of brainless criminals who were selling mostly stolen guns to the Gulf Cartel, which was run by a man named Ociel Cardenas. He was the leader of the Gulf Cartel. This man, by the way, Ociel Cardenas, who was known for his brutality, actually was very nice to me. He gave me a pair of headphones and a pair of shoes one time. He was known for gifting people many, many, many pieces of lead. But to me, he was always kind of cool. Gave me a set of headphones one time, a pair of shoes. After my friend Nick, that's not Nick's real name. His real name is Harold James Nicholson. Yes, that Harold James Nicholson, Jim Nicholson, former station chief, CIA station chief, said that he was cool. So he was the one that kind of hooked us up together. Anyway, back to Ociel Cardenas. The criminal thieves that were stealing and selling all those guns, they were a band of actual separate individuals from a quote-unquote prison gang. These people call themselves the Aryan Brotherhood, which is a stupid name, but whatever. These people are mindless idiots who, in prison, so they are kind of outside of a prison as well. As evidenced by, they were actually being used by the Obama administration and the DOJ, which was being run by Eric Holder. The thief in Tupelo that was doing all the stealing, which, by the way, in prison gets you stabbed, was an Aryan Brotherhood gang member who secretly, quote-unquote, dropped out of the Aryan Brotherhood gang. His name is Christopher A. Stutzy, Stuttsy, who went by the gang name Turbo. I know it's stupid, but in prison, small-minded half-wits give themselves superhero names to kind of hide their shame at being otherwise useless. Anyway, Dale, who was the CI in Tupelo, Dale Parker, he knew of Christopher Stutzy, formerly the AB Aryan Brotherhood dropout Turbo, and his dealings with the Mexican drug cartels. This guy from Tupelo, it was really a suburb named Pontotoc. Anyway, Stutzy was kind of an idiot, but he was very, very good at what he does, which is stealing. However, he wasn't as good as he thought, because Dale knew of the scheme, and Dale, informed as he was supposed to be, he informed his law enforcement connections. Well, this became a problem. Well, why did this become a problem? Well, because the badged Slim Jim, Jims Johnson, who was the sheriff, had already known about the criminal enterprise and about Stutzy himself, and he was doing absolutely nothing about it. But why not? Because he had a role in the scheme. That's why. Yes, we're breaking news here, people. In fact, one of his proudest moments is when he, Slim Jims Johnson, the beef jerky sheriff of Tupelo, when he would provide a list of serial numbers of the stolen guns that was intended for the Mexican drug cartels to the feds, the FBI, the DEA, the ATF especially. This was one of the ways in which Jims Little Johnson was using to kind of disarm the citizens of Tupelo.
This call is from a federal prison.
To let the white supremacist gang dropout Stutzy do that, take away people's guns, even from the stores and the pawn shops there, by the way, and then get that list to the feds for who Stutzy, the white supremacist, was an unwitting tool. Now, the irony of all of this really can't be understated. Think about the irony of this. Let me say this a different way so that you catch it. This supposedly hardcore white supremacist Aryan Brotherhood dropout Stutzy was a tool of the first black president and black attorney general running stolen guns, stolen from Robert E. Lee County, to Mexican drug cartels with the sheriff's blessing. That's insanity. Well, the flip side is actually better. Let me put it this way. The first black president, Obama, the world's biggest race baiter, by the way, was knowingly working with white supremacists from Robert E. Lee County. I'm telling you, the truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. You couldn't make this crap up. Anyway, Dale Parker's knowledge of the scheme was a threat. It was a political threat. The Obama administration was very, very desperate to keep this a secret. In Lee County, because of Stutzy being able to operate with impunity there, Lee became one of the reliable pipelines, which guaranteed that Lee County was a continued target. This means that Dale was also a political threat to Jims Johnson. So Dale had to go. All of the evidence of Dale's almost point-blank murder points to one man, Jims Johnson himself. While he may offer you a completely different opinion, I'm certain that I could easily convince a jury that Sheriff Jims Johnson, who actually gained that office because of a murder by cop, is Dale Parker's actual murderer. This is why Dale Parker's case would never be solved. It went over a decade without a solution of any kind from the investigators, because the person ultimately in charge of the investigation was the killer himself. Again, he would offer you a contradictory opinion, but it's in his best interest to do so, isn't it? Incidentally, a sacrificial lamb was eventually offered, just like last year, in fact, after a decade, was eventually kind of offered up to be the patsy and take the fall for the phony investigation, but it was over a decade later. Only after the Netflix people, by the way, conveniently, started sniffing around the story and picking up these leads that I had put them on. What do you want to bet? I don't know this for sure, but what do you want to bet? That the threatened convicted person also happens to have a Hispanic name. Now, aside from the actual evidence, all of which points to James Johnson. And in addition to that, my sourcing on this is very, very reliable because he was there. He was in the operation itself. In fact, it was Christopher Stutze himself. Stutze, hardened criminal who was working for law enforcement, was the whistleblower here. And now, you know. I was that hidden from you before. And I was informed of the operation itself before Cardenas, by him, by Stutze, long before it got disclosed to a couple of reporters who I could trust, real journalists. One of them was by the name of...
This call is from a federal prison.
Sorry, I said Cheryl Atkinson, who, by the way, happens to be a very high-ranking black belt in Taekwondo. The other was James Rosen, who at that time was at Fox News. These two reporters, by the way, who they were who Eric Holder and Obama, and Brennan, by the way, was later terrified that I was talking to about something else, along with Patsy Brumfield and another from the Associated Press. Anyway, after that, it was later recovered, or revealed, I guess you could say, that Stutze's operation with Jim Johnson and Holder and the Obama administration, the feds, it actually had a name. And it actually was an official operation. It was called Fast and Furious, we later found out. Stutze wasn't aware of that name, of course, at the time. Neither was Dale Parker. Jim's Little Johnson probably wasn't either because he was kind of a patsy himself, but every single one of them could have, and inevitably were, been politically devastated, except for Dale Parker, of course, since he had already been killed. So serious cover-up mode was engaged. The FBI had tons of leverage over Jim Johnson, and it was announced that he was even under FBI investigation again. But while they had to give some patina of legitimacy to the FBI investigation of Sheriff Jim Johnson, they could also grant him a reprieve as long as he played ball, provided that he played ball. And guess what? He did. James Johnson was one of the easiest puppets the FBI, that's Bob Mueller and Peter Strzok, and Eric Holder ever puppeted. So eager to please them he was, especially if it involved a scheme to take down Dutschke, something several in Obama administration really wanted for various reasons, a couple of other different reasons. Stutze also made an easy puppet for the FBI agent Stephen Thomason and his little sidekick Quokka to try to set things right. In fact, one of the reasons that former FBI Special Agent in Charge Stephen Thomason got fired, one of the reasons he was no longer the SAIC in my case was because of his fabricated entrapment schemes. They were all lies, but lies that he and a special prosecutor got Judge Aycock to co-sign, because apparently she loves and prefers when FBI and prosecutors lie to her. I don't know why. That's just, I don't know. Maybe women like liars. It's news to me. So who was the person that Stephen Thomason leveraged into one of his failed entrapment schemes? It was none other than the white supremacist turned whistleblower, Christopher A. Stutze himself. Stutze was told that he could avoid prison if he'd lie under oath about me. And by the way, another one of Thomason's entrapment schemes, which also didn't work, involved releasing, get this is no shit here, this is a very serious matter, releasing a serial rapist back onto the streets. Also Dennis Montgomery, that was his name. He was given his freedom to avoid prison if he would co-sign Thomason's lie. His scheme failed, but as part of the deal, Dennis Montgomery, the rapist, was freed so that he could keep raping North Mississippi college students. Because apparently Thomason and Aycock, apparently, they like and they want to endorse more rapes. Anyway, the reason that this particular cabal is important is because of what you think, and it's easy to perceive why you think of it this way, why you'd see it this way, that first salvo against me. As you witness with Trump, it is the local machine which really does all the damage, no matter what the end result, which was, by the way, as the Kings of Tupelo presented, an accusation of indecent exposure, even though their story keeps changing. It's been over a decade, according to the Kings of Tupelo. The news story is about the claim of an open window at my house and a bus full of children, which is completely different than the story at the time. which, by the way, was in magazines and everything, which also kept changing. Never mind that it's a completely different window that they alleged looking through in 2013, which, by the way, is a legal problem for the person peeping, not the person inside the house, which in 2013 they said was the master bedroom. Never mind that the window at my house, which faces the bus stop, isn't my window even. They wouldn't have known that. And the press and the local tools, they also conveniently, but they don't want you asking questions about the conviction of it either, which was that it was obtained in absentia, is what that's called. A conviction which only occurred because I didn't show up for a court date that I didn't know that I had and couldn't appear at because Jim Johnson was holding me inside of his jail, literally with $1 million bond. All of this is a matter of record. And as a matter of record, he refused to transport me the 200 yards away to the courthouse for this court date that I didn't know existed. If you don't show up for your court date, they consider you guilty. So that's how that happened. Why didn't you report that, those of you in the press? You also aren't supposed to know that the conviction was appealed and then later re-adjudicated, which means completely dropped in this particular case. But you didn't know that, did you? Now, Netflix knew that. In fact, I had given them the documentary proof of that dropped case. I even sent them a copy. Why didn't they tell you? Why didn't they show you? Why didn't the press tell you that? Why have they hidden that from you? Also hidden from you was the fraud of the quote-unquote molestation accusation at the same time by the same local tools. You never heard any of the details of it because there aren't any. That's why the indictment is blank, completely devoid of any specifics at all. You who have been so quick to throw stones for the last decade, flinging mud, you never knew who was involved, why it was relevant, why they were there, relevant. Exactly what was being alleged, which, by the way, when you find out, and I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go into detail about it, it's so comical, it really makes them look stupid, and why that case fell apart, why that case was falling apart, and why it did fall apart, which is the main reason why there's no sentence in that case. Why didn't Netflix reveal all of that? They really could have. They did their research, but like the local tools and the local press, they chose to hide the truth from you. They didn't tell you, they didn't show you the truth of it. I will. In an upcoming call, I'm going to blow the lid off exactly that so that you'll have exactly what you need to confront them with it, if you have the courage. I hope you do. But I'm concerned that, like most people, you're too afraid. Don't be. You have the power, not them. They're afraid of the truth. You don't have to be. I've got a lot to reveal, but for now, that's my 3 chords and the truth.